So now let's start with the strings in JavaScript. So basically strings are used to store and manipulate the text, right? And strings can be manipulated, right? And actually stored in the same variable. And string can be defined in two different ways. Either we can use a single quotes to define strings, or you can use double quotes, right? For example, let me create a simple script here. So here I will say, let's say for example, where s1 is equal to, I'll say hello, right? I'm going to take where s2 is equal to, for example, I'm going to say hi. So these are two different strings we have, where we're going to actually provide it one in double quotes and in single quotes. Both will be accepted by JavaScript. So here, if you want to club this, right? For instance, I'll say where some other string, right? Let's say I'm going to define something called this is John, for instance, right? And I want to mention John in single quotes, right? Yes, you can mention it. So now, for example, I'm going to write it down as 3. So when I run this program, so it says S3. Oh, my mistake. S3 I've taken capital S. It's JavaScript is case sensitive, right? So let me take both small variables and let me run this. So I'll say this is John, single quotes. For instance, you want to define this name in double quotes, right? So now what happens, you can see. Now JavaScript will not understand, right, which double quote is for starting the string and which one is to end the string. Now in this situation, you can see that it will not understand, and when you try to run the program, right, you can see it won't understand anything. And most of the times, right, whenever you get any error out in JavaScript, right, it will not, it will not stop the page execution, but it will not continue the script execution as such, right? So in order to actually handle these type of characters, right, we have something called escape character. Escape character called slash to handle the special cats or characters in string. For instance, so when you take this complete string, in between if you use double quotes, it's a special character for the string. So if you want to make sure this is working, right, provide a escape character. Now this is called as a escape character. Escape character meaning, don't take double quote as the actual meaning of JavaScript, but just take it as a character. That's how this escape works, right? So now when I run this program, now you'll see you're getting output in actual double quotes. Fine. So this is how we normally use the value, right, special character to its actual meaning. For example, here let me take one more. Let's say I'll take s3 is equal to, for instance, I'll say it's my pen, for example, and I'm gonna give single quote here, right? So here when run this anyways it will take, because this is single quotes in between. So here the single quote which you have mentioned here, right, will give you a true meaning, right, when you're actually planning for this. right? So similarly, we have many many times when you're actually looking for escaping the character meaning. Yes, you can always use the um, you can always use escape character to insert just before the special character to make it as a normal character instead of actually taking multiple. Fine. So for instance, here if I'm taking single quotes, for instance, right, because I can define my character in single quotes. Now you can see that it will take this part as a string. So when I run this program, so remaining part you can see is not valid, and it definitely says this is something which is not handleable by S3. So in this situation, let's say if I take my escape character for my um, single quotes, because I've defined my string in single quotes, now when I run it, it actually takes the true meaning of single quote. So this is how we normally take special characters using escape sequence. Fine. So similarly, right, we have many properties. So one main property of string is length property, right? Properties, and anyways we're going to see multiple methods, right? String operations we basically we normally call, right, which we have in inbuilt many inbuilt methods we have in strings, which using which we can perform multiple string operations, we'll see. So one of the property being the length of a string, it will actually give you the true count of number of characters we have in the string. So when you run this program, it will give you the length, right, of the string you're actually using. So this is how it gives. So returns the count of characters we have in the string. So it will not include the double quotes. As a double quotes, or if you're using single quotes, they are just to convey that whatever data you're providing within these characters is string. Right? So that's your length. So now let's start with string methods. So for instance, let me take simple string. For instance, s5 is equal to, I'll take it as this is my word. For instance, this is a string you have, right? The first method is caret method, char at, meaning for example I have s5 dot char at. So here we can mention the index or position of a character, and it will give us the character we have at that position. Now here you can see in string each and every character will be arranged in a form of index again. If you want to actually read any specific character, if you know the index, you can actually get that. So for instance, let's say I'm going to get caret some 3 is my position I want to read, right? So let's print it. Console dot, sorry, document dot write. Let's say for instance. So when I run this program, you'll see the caret will give me S. It's like 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this is an index and not a the third character. We are taking the character at third position, which is third index we have. Similarly, we have char coded, which is, let me take this. We have something called char coded. Now this will give us the Unicode value of this character. For instance, so the third position is S, right? The third index value. So this will char coded will give us the Unicode value of that. So you can see 115 is a Unicode value of S as such. So if you are looking for any Unicode value, then you can use your char coded. So let me use BR here so that we'll get the nice outputs. So let me copy and paste it here. Perfect. Let's go to the next one. So next one is, for instance, you can use concat to sum up the strings or to concat, to append the strings. So for instance, if I say s5 dot concat, right, of, for instance, I want to concat s3, right? In this way, using comma, you can concat any number of strings. For example, s1 comma s2 and so on, right? So let's print it, document dot, and let us see one behavior here, how it actually works. So let me put a break here. So when I run my program, you'll see the value of s3. One second. It seems I'm not using the right value. S3, S is small, and I hope S1 is also small, and S2 is also small. View in browser. You'll see that it says this is my world. Now, why it is not concating all? Now, this is a very important behavior in strings we should understand. Whenever we perform any operation on top of string, right, then it will not change the current instance of string, but it will actually return the value or the result of a operation you are performing. So here what we are doing, we are saying s5 is equal to concat of so and so, which means it has to concat s3, s1 and s2 and s3 should concat with s5, right? It will concat and it will return the new string, but it will not change s5 as such. So for instance, here I'm taking where some s6 for instance, and now let's print s6 and run this. Now you'll see s6 will give me, this is my world, it's my pen and hello, hi, everything got concatenated. This is a concat here, right? And then we have next method called ends with. Now this is important. Ends with meaning, for instance, s5 dot ends with. So here I can give my string or character. For instance, I want to give ends with colon, right? So when I run my program, you will see it will give me object doesn't support property or method ends with. So s5 is string, right? So we have considered s5 is string. This is my world, and s5 we have everything is fine, and we are saying that it ends with, right? So for instance, let me just take one word, for instance. That's fine, it doesn't matter actually. Is s5 defined? Let me redefine s5 here. s5 is equal to so and so, and the same s5 I'm going to use it here. Dot ends with of world. This returns a boolean value. Let me run it. Come on, man, how does it doesn't support? You have s5 dot ends with, and I can give, right, third string, for instance t. This will give me a boolean value which I'm actually printing directly. Let me remove this break. Object doesn't support. Okay. Anyways, so when you define any string, for instance, if I define where s7, for instance, which is a new string I want to define, this is my word, and when I say s7, right, dot ends with so and so word called world, then it will give me true or false. Maybe this at this moment it is not actually running. This object doesn't support the property method. but it does actually support, because strings basically. So this will be supported anyways if you are using the latest browser like Edge or something, right? It will actually support your word. So this will give us true or false. So same stuff if you want to check, let's say for example my. Now you can see that this doesn't end with my, right? But you want to check my with the last content, or the last position, or the end position, till what position you want to check. For instance, here you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So let's say for example I want to check till ninth position. So which means till ninth position it will actually consider the data, right? And then it will actually take up the value. So when we are actually reading only till 9, right? So definitely it ends with my, because we are talking about only this part of string. Now this will return true in this case. That's how this index is written. Let's comment it out. Let's go down. So now let's take another string. Let me call it as s5 as this also again. Now we have one more method called include. Includes. So this includes, right, checks whether our string contains this data or not, right? So here let's say I'm gonna print document.write s5.includes of, for instance, you want to give some value is, for instance, meaning we are checking whether this contains, the string contains is or not, right? So when I run this program, right, you should be able to get okay, maybe these methods are not coming into this browser version I'm actually using, but includes, when you are actually using this method, right, you will actually get output, right, as true or false. Fine. So that's how it is actually it actually returns your data. You can actually try this out. That's what includes. Now similarly, for instance, when you want to check, right, whether the string includes, you can see is, we have two times, one here and one here. For instance, if you want to check the next instance after the first occurrence, yes, you can always give something called position, start position, from where you want to check. So for instance I can give 0, 1, 2, 3. For instance 4 I'm giving, which means I want to search from fourth position. Then yes, it will actually check, which means this part of string will be checked, and it will see whether this string includes is or not. That's how it works. Now let's go to the next one. We have document dot write, for instance s5 dot, we have something called index of. So index of meaning, right, I want to get index of some string here. So here the beauty here in JavaScript is, right, you give one single character or a word, right, it will actually get the index of a start character. For instance, if I give my, right, my is the first, right, and you want to mention the position here, or don't mention it. So when you don't mention it, which means it will automatically take the value from 0, right? So index of my being, it will give you 8, you can see here, right? Let me just maximize this. You can see 8, meaning it will take the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you can see. Starts from 8. That's how you can actually mention. So for instance, if I say is here, right, when I run this, it will give me 2 because it occurs here. For instance, if I want to skip the first one and take, right, you can always give the start index here. For instance, I'm going to give 4, just for instance. So when I run this, then it will give me the output of next occurrence of is, which is 5. 5 meaning Is meaning it will pick the first character, and first character index it will actually get. That's your index of. Fine. So this is how we can actually get the index. And anyways, this is like case sensitive check we do. So let's say if I want capital IS when I run this program, right? You will see. So when it doesn't find the match string, then it will always give us -1 for the index. Similarly, if you want to get the same stuff from last, right, where I'm going to say document.write of s5 dot last index of, for instance, I'm going to get easier. So here when I run this, again you can see it will give you the data. So you were saying s15, sorry, s5 dot last index of is, right? So it is giving me the value 5. Now these are concatenated, it's not 15 here. So let me put a break so that you'll understand. So you'll see the value is 5, right? So from last it will start checking is. Now as soon as it finds out, it will give me the true position of the word I'm actually looking for. That's your 5. That's your last index of, right, where you can actually check data. So similarly, in last index you can always mention the position. Position meaning from last, right? Where do you want to check? For instance, I want to check till what? So for instance, I want to check till, let's say, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. For instance, let me give 4 here. So when I run this program, you'll see 2, which means it will take only this much string, and from last it will check. From last again, what is the ending point? It's this one. So the position of this is 2. So that's why it will give us the value 2. That's how last index actually works. Right. Similarly, we have one more method. For instance, we have where a1 is equal to, for example, hello. Similarly, where a2 is equal to, for instance, we have hello. So if you want to compare two strings, right? So I can say document.write, or for instance a1 dot, you have something called local compare, or you have direct something called local compare, we'll see of. So here we can mention with what? So let's say I'm going to check with a2, right? So this will give me whether both the values are same or not. So when I use local compare, right, it will give me the number output. So there are three different possibilities of output numbers you have. Either it can be -1, or it can be 0, or it can be 1. So 0 if it is same, -1 it will give if the values, the comparison values, right, if a1 is before hello. Similarly 1, which means here, I mean, before or after value based on their unicodes, it will give you the output. But anyways, if it is not 0, then both the strings are not same. So let me run this. You will see it will give you -1. Similarly, for instance, if I make it hello small h, right, which both are same, then you can see it will give you 0, right? So this is how the actual method, right, 0 is defined using your locust. Similarly, we have something called a repeat method. For instance, if you want to repeat any string multiple times, you don't have to copy again and again. You can just say a1, for instance, I want to repeat sometime. Let's say for instance 4 times I want to repeat. Let's put a break here. Let me run this. You'll see, right? Okay, this doesn't support, but when you say repeat of 4, then hello will be repeated 4 times in the same string, right? That's what is a repeat method we have, right? Similarly, we have replace, very important and mostly used one, right? Let me define this again here as 5. So here I'll say document dot write. So I'm continuously writing this document dot write because whenever I use, right, any string function, right, that specific string is not changed, but the data out of which the change string will come will be returned, right? And the same return value I'm actually writing. So for instance, I want to replace what? You can provide a string or a word. For instance, I want to replace s, and replace with what? For example, I want to replace with some other rates here. Let me run this. Now you will see, right, wherever there is, right, s first occurrence will be changed to s, right? So here the same thing we can also give some regular expression to change all the things. So we are going to understand the regular expression patterns, right? Here, for instance, here let's say if I give capital S, right, again whatever we have seen, everything is a case sensitive. When I give capital S, definitely it will try to find capital S, but it is not there, so it will skip. So when I run this program, you will see it will not get anything, right? So output will be same. So for instance, whatever happens, if you want to follow certain pattern to change it, right, then yes, we can always go for something called regular expressions. Very important stuff, right? So here, for example, I'm going to take a pattern. Let's say P1 pattern. What pattern I want? So regular expression patterns always start with forward slash, and you have to mention which character to search. For example, I want to search S, right, irrespective of case. Now this one is a pattern, and then regular expressions always comes with this syntax. We'll have pattern here, and then we'll have modifier. So this is a syntax of any regular expression here. So pattern, okay, what pattern you want? I want a pattern to get S. And what is a modifier? Modifier will give you whether to whether to search globally, right, whether to search with case insensitive, right, right, insensitive and all, right? So for if globally use G keyword, for case insensitive we use I keyword. For multi search we have M for multi search. So these are the modifiers you have, and the patterns you have. You can actually see multiple patterns today. So first thing, I gave S meaning yes, I want to check all S irrespective of case. I'll say I here. Case meaning it will check all the S we have, and whatever comes up S it will replace. So here I'm gonna use P1. P1 meaning the pattern. So now when I run this, so you'll see, right, the first occurrence being changed, right? So for instance, I'm concentrating on I. For instance, I know that I have small s defined, and I want to change all the s whatever it is occurring. Then we'll say G, for instance, which is globally. So when I right click and say view browser, you will see at the rate. So both the s characters got changed. This is how we normally change the characters. Similarly, if you don't want to actually depend on again defining, let's say I'll say capital S and IG, I can make both modifiers at a time, I and G, meaning okay, both case insensitive and globally. So when I run this now, So you can see it is searching globally, and also, right, it is taking insensitive. I gave cap less here, but it is taking the actual s values and changing it to so on. So this is what we have for replace, right? So in this way, let's say for example, if you want to actually we're going to see some of the regular expressions. So for instance, you want to change multiple characters at a time. Let's say s and one more character. For example, you want to change, right, s, and for instance we'll take y, right? So y here you have only one, so this is my world. For instance, I'm going to take y something. Let's say I want to change even y with the same value. So what you can do here, you can perform excuse me, we can give or operator and mention y, capital Y. Similarly, for instance, you want to give l also. Similarly, for instance, you want to give m also. So as many as you can, you want that you can define. It is not just one character, right? You can also define multiple characters also, right? So this is how you can. So here what happens, it can be s or y or l or m. In this pattern, it will search globally irrespective of case, and it will change the pattern. That's how it works. Let me look at the browser. You will see this s got converted, and then you have at the rate. You can see everywhere at the rate, which means my m and y got changed, and in this world l got changed and y got changed. This is how we normally change or replace the strings based on. So it is not just characters. You can also change for words. For example, here I'm going to give or. We have something called word, right? So when I run this, you can see or got changed at once, and ld world. That's how it is changed. So this is how we can replace or um, replace the text or a character we are actually looking for, right? So similarly, we have something called split, right? So split, or even before that, let's say for instance, we're going to take something called search some character here or string here. I'm going to take s. So let's say I'm going to say document dot write of s5 dot, you have something called search. So here you can mention either string. For instance, I'm going to take string. For instance, I'm going to take m here, right? So when I say search, right, you will see it will give me -1. So why it is giving -1? Let me just put a break here so that you will understand it better. So here I'm taking capital M, and you can see it says, right, it doesn't exist, right? So here the main intention here is to search whether this word or a character exists and what is the position of the character. So similarly, here I can make my pattern. For example, I'll say pattern p2. Pattern always starts and ends with slash. Let's say what to check m. So I want to check case insensitive and global. Yes, I'll give both. So here instead of giving m and so, I'll just give p2. That's it, right? I'm searching for a pattern. So when I run this, I will see I'm getting 8. 8 meaning m is at 8th index. You can see we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is your 8th index. So that's how the search operation is performed, right? So similarly, we have split. For instance, I'm going to take this. Split always gives us, right, array of strings, right? So for instance, I'm going to take where, for instance, strarr string array, right? So let's say I'm going to take s5, which is string dot split. So I can provide some delimiter here. Let's say for example, I'm going to provide space. So here space is my delimiter. So based on space, I want to split all these words. So now you can see it will get splitted and it will get saved in strarr. Right. So now here this is my complete string I have. So what I'll do, I can actually get this array and print. Right. So for instance, I'm gonna take for instance for in loop. Right. So where I'm gonna mention strarr. So I'll document dot write, or for instance strarr of I meaning it will give me the index. So let me take this break here, put it. So let me run this. So you'll see this is my word, right? So here we are actually splitting the characters or words we have. So you can actually provide any thing here. For instance, we just gave space here. For instance, I want to give some repeating, let's say y. I can give this character y. So based on y, it will take the y as a delimiter and it will split. You can see this is my, so y is a delimiter here till here, and then it will check till wh kind of. This is how split of each sub will be done, right? So this is where you have to provide your character. So let's say for example, if I give capital Y, right? So let's say I'm gonna run this. So you'll see it will give you all because it doesn't find that character. So it is case sensitive, which we have to refer to, right? So this is your actual split we normally do. So similarly, we have, if you want to get some extract, basically the content or part of a string, which is we normally call substring. Yeah. So here we have two different ways to get actually substring. The first way is to use substr. Right. For instance, let me take this S5 again document. Right. Now here what I'm gonna do, let me comment this wherever it is looping. So here I'll say document S5 dot, we have something called substr. Now here the main inputs are, okay, from where to start. This is your start index, right? For instance, I'm gonna start from 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. For instance, I want to start from 8th index, and how many number of um, characters you want. If I don't give anything, let's see what happens. Then what happens, from 8th index, it will print everything. It will take all the characters from that point, right? Rather actually giving all. For instance, I want some 4 characters or 5 characters, for instance. Then what it will do, so when I run my program, you will see it will give me my 1 2 3 4 and 5 spaces in between. Words does make sense, right? It can be 1 2 or 3 spaces. If it is defined between the words or characters, then it does make sense. So that's your substr, where we are providing the length or number of characters you want. Similarly, we have one more method called s5 dot substring, right, where you can mention start index and end index, right? So let's say for example, I want right from 8 index again, but let's say I want to end at maybe 8 9, maybe I want to end at 10. So if I take 10 here, right? So anyways, when I say end, it is not included. 8 is included and 10 is not included. When I run this program, you'll see there is only my, there is no space in here. For instance, if I give 11 here, you'll see when I run my program, right, you'll see here you have your my, right? So here your 11, which is the last index, end index will not be counted. It will take till 10th index. That's what 8th index to that. That's your substring method you have, where you're actually taking data from. So similarly, we have more methods. So some more important methods, like you have, yeah, document dot write of s5 dot to upper, for instance, to uppercase, right? So this is to print or get all the records, so all the words of the string in uppercase. Similarly, you have lowercase too. Let me show you that. So you have to lower, right? To use to lower, lowercase or lowercase. So let's run this. You'll see all lower cases and upper cases. Similarly, you have something called trim. For instance, if I take this string and there are leading and trailing spaces, right? Definitely the white spaces which you have at a start and end does not make any sense, right? So here, when you print it, for instance, document dot write of s5, for instance. So when I run this, you'll see that generally, right, when you're actually doing, so performing some operations here, for instance, what operation you can say, s5 or generally s3, for instance, I want to take s3 dot concat of s5, for instance. If I run it, right, so here, okay, so it does actually take this. One second, let me just make in this way, s5 concat s3. So s5 is capital, run it. Okay, maybe it is not taking, it is automatically trimming up, right? But generally, when we do operation, it does take the leading characters and then perform the operation. So here, in order to remove the spaces, just use trim. So you have trim, three different functions: trim left, trim right, and trim right. Trim left and right means just leading or trailing. Complete trim means removing both leading and trailing spaces. That's how you can actually use trim method to. So these are, most used methods, string methods we have, right, which can be actually used, right, for to perform string operations. Similarly, we have few more methods which are normally called as, HTML wrapper methods, which are not standard methods, and it is not, basically recommended to use, right, because all, it may not work in all browsers. So let me give you some examples for kind of. For instance, I have document dot write of s5 dot, I have a method called bold, for instance, right? So what it will do, it will actually convert the string s5, right, and it will actually convert, and it will make it as bold, you can see. So this will automatically generate the styling of this as a bold. Similarly, you can create links, for instance, if you want. So for instance, you have something called document dot write of, let's say I'm going to take some string. So let's say this s5, I'm going to make this s5 as my link, for instance. This is my string, right? I'm taking my string. So let me keep a break here, and here I'll say s5 dot have something on link. So here I can give my href meaning the anchor href. So here I'm giving, let's say, http www dot, let's say, for example, google.com, for instance. So when I run this program, right, you will see this s5 as my link. See, this will create as a my link is a text, and it will create it. So when I click on it, so it definitely, it will reroute, right, to the page which is cross server, and it will open up whatever domain we gave. For instance, to google.com, for instance. So that's how it actually works. And so these are the methods which are HTML wrapper methods which we normally use generally for actually wrapping up things here. So this is how the main methods are basically used. String methods basically used to perform string operations. So any questions, guys, still here? So these are the string methods we have, right, which we normally perform in our real time, and we normally use the regular expressions to search, right, to replace, to test methods, and so on. So if you're good, let's go to the next topic called math. For today, we'll actually see the math, very important one, and this is basically used. Math is an object in JavaScript which allows to perform the mathematical tasks or numbers basically. So here we have many tasks under math object, right? So let's see most of the math object which we normally use. Let me create a new file. So let me save it. Let me call it as math .html. Let me use a script. So here let me call document dot write of, for instance, math dot, for instance, let me take the method called random. So random is a method in math object, right, which will generate the random method between 1 and 0. So you'll see it will always generate a random method between 1 and 0, always, right? So for instance, based on your requirement, if you have a requirement to actually generate a number between 1 and 100, for example, so you can always, let's say for instance, I'm gonna multiply with 10, for instance. So when I run this program, right, so you'll see that, right, it actually does give some value between, right, 1 and 10, you can see. Similarly, if you want between 100, for instance, let me multiply with 100. So when I run this program, you will see it will give random numbers between, so and so on. I mean, between 0 to 100, it will actually give the random numbers based on this. So this is the math method which we normally use to generate random numbers out of a. So let me create a BR break. So similarly, we have document dot write of min and max. So we have math dot, let's say for example, minimum. So here, let's say for example, minimum, I'm going to give it, let's say 12, 90, 345, 2, 90, for instance. So for instance, I want a minimum of this value. So when you run this, it will give you the value 2, which is minimum form, right? Similarly, we have, let me take this and let's say max. Max is the value. So 1, it will give the minimum of the value, 2, and max the value. So this is our minimum and maximum under math. So similarly, we have, for example, if you are actually uh, working with a decimal, right? Then we have some good methods in this. So let's say write of math dot, the first method being floor. Floor is a floor is a internal math task we have. So when a decimal number is provided, then it actually gives us the ground value or the down nearest value. For instance, I'm going to take 10.97, for instance, right? So let me take a break here. So when I run this program, you'll see it will give us 10, the down value. Similarly, we have three different methods. One floor, and second one is seal. Seal meaning it will actually give the next possible value, right? So even if it is, for instance, I'm going to take 1 2, for instance. 1 2 meaning the it is less than dot 5, so even then you can see here the seal will give you 11, right? And then last one you have is a round. So for instance, I'm going to say round of 10.97. I'm going to say round of round. So when I run this program, you'll see, so seal will give you 11, next highest possible whole number. And then you can see round of 10.97, as after decimal you have more than 5, it will round up. Similarly, when you have less than, it will round down. So that's your round method here. Floor, seal, and round methods which you can actually roll up to actual decimals. So similarly, we have something called absolute value. So absolute meaning if you have any negative values or positive values, it will give you the positive. So for example, if I have this, so when I run this program, it will give you the positive output. That's your absolute value. Similarly, you have power, right? For example, you have pow, right? For instance, you want something like 5 comma 2, which is 5 power 2. When you run this, you will see 5 power 2 is 25. So when you have power, we also have something called square root, which is sqrt. Or for instance, I'm going to give 25 here. When I run this, you'll see 5 here. So that's your power, and that's your uh, 5 here. So in this way, we have many methods. You have trigonometric methods called sine, right? You have something called tan, right? H you have sine H you have, right? Of many. Similarly, you also have something called constants. So some main constants like, so for instance, you have math dot pi. So pi meaning like 22/7. When I run this, it will give me some 3.14, which is calculated for perimeter norm. Similarly, you have for instance square root of 2, right? Some predefined standards. You can see square root of 2 you have, right, which will give me the square root, the actual square root of 2. Similarly, you have square root of 1 by 2, right, which will give us square root of 1 by 2, which is square root of 0.5 kind of. So here, so in this way, you have your standard constants and also the methods which we normally use in math. So in this way, we normally use math to perform some mathematical operations we have in so this is what we have for strings and the math object in HTML, in sorry, JavaScript basically, right? So that's about strings and math you have. So this is what we have for ground concepts we have seen for JavaScript basically. So now we are going to go one step ahead, understanding DOM mainly. So we'll actually see the introduction part now, and we'll actually start our actual DOM objects and calling of DOM and everything in our today's evening class. So here, basically, here we're gonna deal with JavaScript HTML DOM. So DOM meaning document object model, right? So with the HTML DOM, right, JavaScript can access. So this is the main, right? Now we're gonna actually go to the main purpose of JavaScript which we have, right? So this is a very great integration we have where, so the HTML DOM is the one using which JavaScript can access and also modify or manipulate the elements of HTML document, which is document object model. right? So in this concept of DOM, right, so DOM is basically a specification, right? Specification from something called W3C, which is World Wide Web Consortium, right? So it's a specification which we have, right? And it's a standard, I can say, specification or a standard we have, right, from W3C, which is common across all the. I mean, the same standard is actually followed across all the browsers we have. Now this W3C DOM, sometimes we also call W3C DOM also, right? Actually, this provides the platform, right, for any programming or script. So currently, let's take JavaScript. So W3C DOM actually provides a platform to access and update the content of HTML dynamically. When I say content, it can be data, it can be style, it can be hierarchy, it can be any property, it can be anything as such. We can use DOM to do any action here, right? So here, mainly we can take DOM, right? It actually defines, right, in four different ways. We can actually, consider the complete object, HTML object, to perform the manipulations or accessing the HTML elements. So basically, rules are all the HTML elements are considered as objects. So the HTML document is a collection of objects, because HTML, when we say HTML can contain, for instance, HTML is my body tag, for example, the main tag. So under HTML, there can be head tag and there can be body tag, right? And under head, so what different tags can be there? For instance, there can be title tag. I have, let's say, under body, let's say, for instance, I have a form HTML element. So under form, for instance, I have many others, like I have a div, I have input, right, and so on. And for instance, in div, right, I have again mm, span control or span HTML, right, and in the input, right, I have some attributes, right, called, let's say, type. What type of input it is? For instance, type is something button answer. So for ID, for div, for instance, I have some more attributes called ID, where I can mention the unique identifier of this div. So these are attributes. So this is, like you can see here, some hierarchy is maintained. Some parent-child hierarchy is always maintained in our HTML structure. So in this structure, each and every tag or each and every element is related to other element. Every tag. So you can see here, input is related to form. How? Input is under form. So form is a parent of input. Similarly, input is under a body tag through form. Similarly, input is under HTML, right, through body and form tag. So it is like, there are relations we have. So these are all, each element is considered as an object, right? And properties or attributes of each elements are called as properties of HTML elements. Third one. And then, so yeah, now we know that each element is an object and attributes are properties. So to access these, we have something called methods. Methods to access HTML elements, right? And the last one, which is very important, we always look for events. So whenever we click on a button, whenever I move a mouse over on something should get triggered. When I click on it, right click on any button, some action should take. All those actions are actually tagged under events for HTML elements. So these are the ground rules, or the ground, basic way how we can actually access the HTML elements through DOM from JavaScript. Now here you can see we have actually looked at the high level. Anyways, we We're going to take one very important tag called form tag, basically form HTML element, basically, and we're going to see multiple operations of DOM which we can perform, right? And then we'll actually go ahead with other elements you have, other DOM objects you have. So I can say form is a DOM object which I can access through JavaScript, and inside form, whatever childs are defined, I can access them and I can manipulate them as I need. Right? So now we are actually getting into the ROM important stuff, right? So these are some here we're going to learn multiple window or document. We're going to learn similarly how to do the form validations and different stuff we have, right? So this will actually start off in uh, our next class, right? And we'll see how we can actually access. So this is something which is going to be very interesting. So let's meet up in next class and we shall continue. Thanks for joining, guys. Thank you.